Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the IXUS 2025.3 release webinar. Today, we'll walk through the key features and improvements in this latest release. So this release focuses on streamlining workflows and improving performance. So for both the modeler and the manager, we have version 4.16. So the four main highlights are the single input for total port power for easier antenna configuration, editable frequency bands and owners, improved lobe imprints with enhanced visibility controls, and significant manager server optimizations. Let's dive into each one of them. Right, our first major feature in this release is the single input for total port power option. Previously, when adding frequency bands with multiple ports, users had to populate each port individually, even when they only cared about the total power. So many users would fill in the first port and then put zeros in the rest. Now there's a checkbox under the preferences that lets you specify the total port power as a single value. So the system will automatically handle the distribution. For existing antennas, if you have individual port powers already configured, the system will sum them up and show you the total. When you edit, it stores the total value in port 1 and sets the remaining to port 0. Next up is the ability to edit frequency bands and owners after the creation. This is another workflow improvement based on user feedback. So previously, once you added a frequency band to an antenna, you couldn't change the band or owner without deleting and then re-adding. Now you can click on either the frequency band or the frequency band owner to activate the drop-down menu showing all available options for that specific antenna. This makes it much easier to correct mistakes or adapt to changing site configs. We've also made the frequency band owner default to antenna owner when creating new antennas. This reduces clicks and makes the workflow a bit more intuitive. And as you can see in the screenshot, we replaced the delete button with the icon to save space and modernize the interface. Lobe imprints have also received several enhancements in this release. First, we added a dedicated show hide lobe imprint button in the picture toolbar. This makes it quite easy to toggle the lobe imprint visibility without diving into the menus. We've also restructured some of the modeler features and added a new modeler toolbar to better organize these controls. There's a checkbox for the ground plane option. So previously, lobe imprints would always imprint on the ground plane, but when you add slope terrain, as you can see in the image here, the ground plane no longer represents the actual ground. The terrain itself does. So now there's a checkbox that lets you enable or disable imprinting on the ground plane. And the default for whether it is going to be checked or not, it is configurable in the IXUS ini file as well. And finally, speed improvements. So we've reduced the number of times the antenna list needs to be called, and there's a considerable speed up, especially on sites with lots of custom antenna models. In our testing, the improvement was most dramatic on complex sites. Okay, visibility locking between pictures is also something that we've improved. When creating pictures in the modeler, you can now carefully configure which elements are visible. So exclusion zones, lobe imprints, environmental slices, and so on. Previously, certain actions would invalidate these visibility settings, forcing you to reconfigure all of your pictures, especially when it came to lobe imprints and exclusion zones. Now, the visibility states for these four key elements are locked between pictures. So regardless of the simulation you run, this means that you can set your pictures up once and then they stay configured correctly. So if you have to rerun the simulation, the pictures will remember which one had the exclusion zones visible, which ones had the lobe imprints visible, and so on. Right, we've also got some minor features and enhancement that improve the overall user experience. Label visibility when placed close to geometry has been improved. So labels, markers, field points, also environmental slices now prioritized properly so they don't get hidden by the geometry if it's at the same level. The placement of the label itself is a bit more intuitive. So whichever angle you're viewing it from, the placement of the label will be more natural in that sense. And finally, the first corner of the polyline type objects is now snappable. This makes it much easier to create closed geometries where the endpoint snaps back to the start point. So this feature is true for most, just the railings and the barriers will be enabled in the future. Then there's various manager server optimizations. These improvements will be especially noticeable for customers with large databases or heavy concurrent usage. We've optimized several administration tab objects to reduce expensive SQL calls. The antenna models tab is also better configured now with the polarization and configuration columns removed to drastically reduce loading times. We found that these columns were rarely used but were causing significant performance overhead. The antennas tab on the base station as well has been optimized, similarly with reduced CPU load. And then for reporting and 3D model operations, we've reduced the number of snapshot calls. So that optimizes the metadata that the modeler sends to the manager when the model is saved back. So now only unique values are sent, and that has a better improvement in the load as well. And finally, we've limited the signage image uploads to 1 megabyte. We found that when uploading unnecessarily high resolution images, it puts significant strain on the manager and on the modeler manager communication. And 1 megabyte is sufficient for a good quality image there. This release also has 14 bug fixes that improve stability and user experience. Key fixes include blueprint transform errors, where users could accidentally delete it when moving or rotating them. Blueprint corner snaps are better. Obviously, the complete list is available in the release notes on the help desk. This is just focusing on some of them. We've also resolved the modded license stability issues, particularly a problem where the licenses were being lost every 5 minutes due to PC time synchronization issues with the server. And there's additional fixes for file corruption when saving to network drives, calculation crashes when lobe imprints are selected, and various other edge cases are also fixed. Okay, then we can head on to the demonstration. So this is just an overview of what we'll be looking at. And I will switch my window to the modeler screen. Can you just confirm if you can now see the modeler on your end?
Yeah, we can see the modeler.
All right, awesome, thanks. All right, so just zooming in to show you what the building looks like. It's a generic rooftop. We see here there is a elevated roof level or a penthouse where antennas are located on each side. And yeah, just geometry objects and a few environmental slices that are currently hidden in this view. Okay, so I'd like to start by going into the antenna enhancements. I'll just use the first one. So once we go in, this is unchanged, but when you click on details, we'll see here the new icon appears on the right side, but also the bigger change is the ability to have a drop down in case you want to change the frequency or the frequency band owner. So let's say it needs to be reconfigured, or if an error was made, then you can go back to a different one. So the drop down shows all of the supported frequency bands for a specific antenna. And in this case, we can see the number of ports supported by this particular frequency. But if we want to switch to another one which has lesser ports, the modeler automatically changes that. And similarly, we can move in a different direction as well. So if we go back to different frequency bands, it automatically adjusts to the spec of the antenna. And then if we are moving from less to more, the new ports are undefined, so the user will have to redefine them, and then we can save the antenna. Right. And while we're discussing antennas, we can also go to edit preferences in the general options all the way at the bottom. Here we can see there's an option called specify total ports power. If I check this and then I go into the same antenna, this is the user interface then. So we can see, instead of seeing individual ports, irrespective of what frequency band it is, we see all of the power combined in one column. And this is editable. So if it needs to change, we can edit this to something else. And likewise, if it's still the same, we don't have to force the edit. And even this option or in this menu, we can change the frequency bands to different things. And you don't have to worry about the ports. It all gets allocated correctly in the backend. Okay, and this is a user-specific change. So if you change it on your side, it won't impact the entire team. If the site is saved back to the manager will see that this power that we've just changed is allocated on port 1 and all the other ports are zeroed out. The ports that were unchanged, they will remain as is. So we can just have a view of that. If we untick that option, and we go back into the same antenna, we'll see that the power that I added there is just allocated to port 1 and then the rest are zeroed out. The parts that are unchanged are coincidentally configured the same way, but if it was configured like this, it's still the same. And I've worked on the site. I've changed, let's say, this to 90, but I haven't changed the other ones. I can save the changes, and even if someone else is viewing the site who doesn't have this option ticked, we'll be able to see it like this. All right. Then we can go into the simulation of the site, which will then give me an option to show you what the images look like and how the visibility is retained in that. So I'll just run the simulation. Okay, and now we can calculate the lobe imprints. So this is the drastic speed improvement that I would like you to notice. If I click OK, and it gets done, it's almost instant. And speaking of lobe imprints, we have a visibility toggle. So if you see, let me first take away the exclusion zones. This is the lobe imprints on the site, and there is a toggle which allows you to change whether it's visible or not. The same option is available in the new picture toolbar, which you can see here. And there is a customized toolbar with all of the visibility options for you to access in one neat space. So this is the exclusion zone on and off, the mesh or the ability to select areas on the exclusion zone on and off, the lobe imprint visibility on and off. If the slices are there, then we will have the option to see the legend. If the slices are not shown, then the legend will not appear. Similarly, if we want to see geometry in a 3D or a wireframe, if you want to zoom out to the entire extent and looking at it from top view. So all of the camera related or the visibility related toggles are in one place. This is a new toolbar, and it is also present in the pictures toolbar, or in the pictures menu. Right. Now we can go through the different snapshots. So the first snapshot here, I can see one of the environmental slices is visible, the other two are hidden. There's an area annotation that is visible, but the exclusion zones are not visible in this case. In the second photo, I see the exclusion zones are visible, but the slices and the other things are not. In picture 3, we see all of the 3 slices are visible, the area annotation is visible, but the exclusion zone are not. And then from almost exactly the same angle, we see the lobe imprints are visible here as well. Okay, so now I will just do something. Previously, if we reran the simulation, or if there were changes made to the antenna and then someone had to run the simulation again, the exclusion zones and the lobe imprints would appear in all of them, irrespective of what was selected. now it remembers each one. So as you can see, I didn't go into each one to hide the exclusion zone, even when I ran the simulation, but it remembers which one had what toggle enabled. Okay. Then we can go into polyline type objects. So if I'll just zoom out into a blank area of the model. If I now start on corner 1, corner 2, corner 3, corner 4, and I want to close the object. Now corner 1 is snappable. I don't have to manually measure where it is. It will automatically snap to the first point, and then I can create an object. The same holds true for others, like a fence, for example. If I want to create a fence, it's going to be very easy to create closed geometries now instead of having to manually measure where the first point was. Caution lines, if needs to be, also follow the same. The objects that already have texture or for example, a polygon automatically behave as closed objects, so we don't worry about that. So automatically my second last snap would snap to the first one because it needs to create closed geometry. But for open-ended ones, we can see that the first point is also now snappable. Okay, then I would like to zoom into one of the environmental slices. This is a visibility enhancement. So previously, if in this case, you can see the slice is placed exactly at the same level as the geometry, but from whatever angle I'm viewing it, the preference is always given to the environmental slice. Previously, the modeler might have tried to show the geometry from certain areas, but in this case, we've made sure that the slice is always going to be displayed. And that holds true for slices that are on vertical sides as well. We see here, the slice is perfectly along the vertical edge of this block. And even if I'm viewing it from different angles, we can see the preference and the priority is always given to a slice. Okay, similar enhancement has also been made to a sign. So in this case, we see there's a sign on the top. If I place the label, let me first show the label. And if I'm looking at it from top view, it becomes much easier to navigate. So you'll see it follows the cursor much more closely as opposed to jumping from one point and a little bit further away. There's much more closer cursor movement. And if I'm viewing it from exactly top view, the preference of the working plane. So by the working plane, I mean this green square that just is a visual aid to let me know on what plane am I moving this label on, will always take priority over the geometry if it's in the same plane. So if you can see here, the label will always be visible even if it's on the same vertical plane or same horizontal plane, I mean. Okay, and then in terms of intuitiveness, if I change the camera view, I can also move this and the working plane will adjust to where I'm looking at it from. So if I'm looking at it from this side, the working plane will always be facing normal to the camera. So that makes it much easier to place labels. So that's for signs. It's also true for labels. If you can see, the working plane will move along with me. And markers also have been optimized in that sense. So previously, if a marker was placed exactly at the object, certain angles would make the marker slightly disappear or not visible from certain angles. But in this case, if we see, the marker will always be visible even if it's flush on that object. Obviously, if something physically is blocking it, then it's a different case. But while it's on the same plane and we are able to view it, the marker will be displayed. I'm just trying to see if there's anything else on the modeler side before I go into the manager optimizations. Okay, there is some metadata with regards to the properties of the snapshots, but it is not practical to demo that. But you will notice a change when you save back models and when you open them on the manager and that interface.
We can maybe just also show the lobe imprint ground.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So when I created the lobe imprint last time, I ran over this point. So there's now a checkbox which says imprint on ground plane. So when I initially click it, whether that it is checked or not checked, that can be configured on the IXUS ini file. But what this option does is if an antenna is placed close to the ground, by ground I mean the zero or the ground marker, that horizontal plane, and we have an imprint that would have been created on ground. Previously, it would always imprint on ground plane. Now the user can toggle that on and off. So if you unselect that, it will skip the ground plane. In this case, our antennas are further up, which is a fairly common scenario. But for edge cases or for areas where the ground is not flat, we might need that feature, and it is quite useful in that sense. And because the lobe imprints are so much faster now, the ability to put it on and off is, yeah, it's almost instant, even though it recalculates. Okay. Now I have moved over to Manager. If you can just confirm whether you can see the screen where I am on the IXUS Manager.
Yes.
All right, thank you. Okay, so the first optimization is in the administration tab. Normally there was a lot of expensive SQL calls here in the back end, which caused this page to be much slower in load times. That has been optimized. While we are here, we can go into the signage. And if we choose something that is greater than 1 megabyte, it will tell us that it needs a smaller file size. Okay, another big improvement is in the antenna models tab. So still within administration, in the antenna models, if we select an antenna manufacturer that has a lot of antennas, in this case, I will select CommScope and select 100 models to be displayed. So previously this would take much longer, but in this case it is almost instant, even going from page 1 to page 2. And similar optimization has also been done within the base station tabs itself. So if we go into antennas, it is much faster in terms of loading. Okay, there's also back-end optimizations that are not visible on the demo itself, but the users will be able to see the difference when they use the manager as well. Okay, while I am displaying this, I just wanted to show you the knowledge base. So if you go on the help desk, next to tickets, there is knowledge base. And if you scroll down, you will see there is the latest release. The comprehensive release notes are also uploaded here. The webinar recording will also be uploaded here. And then there's feature requests. So if you have new features, then or ideas, please feel free to log them there. Okay, so yeah, as always, we're here to support you. If you haven't upgraded yet, please reach out to us through our support channels. So that is via the email or via the help desk on a ticket. If you need assistance, you can also schedule a call with us. And then, yeah, the comprehensive release notes are already available. You can feel free to browse through that. And like I said, if you have ideas on new features or improvements, please do log them. We actively review all of the requests when planning future releases. And also your feedback helps us a lot. So please share your thoughts on these new features once you've had a chance to use them. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining, and please feel free to reach out if you do have any other points that you'd like to discuss. Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.